As we move on to chapter 7, the wisdom of not having a preference, we're here talking about the Tao Te Ching, and we're going to go through 81, the 81 verses of the Tao Te Ching through my translation that I wrote a while ago. I've been using the Tao for about 20 years. It was a big part of my recovery from addiction and alcoholism, and I look at it as a real great guide to living life more reasonably, meaning not asking other things to change so that I can live, right? I don't want anything to change. Everything is as it needs to be. And to be able to accept that is a big responsibility and a big job, I think, for lots of people. I think complaining or being a victim has become a plague in our lives. And so I think this is a good time to be looking at the Tao. So chapter 7, this video is about chapter 7, the wisdom of not having preference. Speaking of, wanting things to change, right? What it states here, Tao is infinite. It doesn't grow old or tired. Because it has no preference for itself, it can always persist. The master puts herself last and always finds herself first. By being detached from preference, she can give herself to what is and find fulfillment there. So there are two major concepts here that we're talking about. One, that both revolve obviously around preference. One, Tao is infinite. It doesn't grow old or tired. Because it has no preference for itself, it can always persist. That is making a statement that is similar to, if you have a preference, it's going to take a toll on you. And that toll is going to present itself as aging or pain or disease or all sorts of things. If you want to persist and you vivacious, you don't have a preference. Don't have a preference for things to be different. Don't have a preference for things to be anything. Just accept them as they are. Love them as they present themselves to you. That is the kind of overarching message in those first couple lines. Tao is infinite. It doesn't grow old or tired. Because it has no preference for itself, it can always persist. Doesn't matter. This is what it is, and I'm going to persist through it. That is a beautiful sort of sentiment. Now we move on to the human aspect, right? The master. Now the master is, better than all of us, right? Like they're the master. But even still, they are human. The master puts herself last and always finds herself first. By allowing other things to go ahead of her and not taking it so seriously or not taking it personally, she will live beyond this moment. We talked earlier in another chapter about the idea that it always finds herself first. Oh, I lost it again. I lose these things sometimes. Sometimes they're there and then they go away. But that's okay. The master puts herself last and always finds herself first. So if you can find yourself in a place where you can just allow other things, this is yielding, right? The great feminine is yielding. And you find yourself first. Why? Because we're patient. We know that things are going to change. If you're thinking clearly, then you know this is going to change. This is just this manifesting moment. This moment is going to yield to another moment. And that moment is going to be different. Right? And so the master puts herself last. You allow those that are ahead of you to be ahead of you. And then you'll get ahead of them eventually because they're going to wear themselves out. Why? They have preference. And if you have a preference, it takes a toll. Point. Be fulfilled now. There is nothing that you need to obtain fulfillment. You have fulfillment. Whether or not you're willing to receive it is a completely different story. Now, when we talked about the feminine and the great mother and it being supportive to you, you're using it even if you're not aware of it. That's what we're saying here. You're using your power, that connection with Tao, to not feel fulfilled if you are feeling like you are the victim of circumstance or if you have a preference. What are you using this connection to Tao to accomplish in your life? Because if you have a preference, well, even the idea of of, well, I don't want a preference. That's a preference. Like all of these things have to melt away eventually. And they melt away by you loving yourself and becoming aware of where you have desire. You know, oh, I have desire for that. That's interesting. I have desire to not have a preference. That's interesting. Let's just keep going. Let's experience this moment as it is. And then maybe one day you're going to notice that you have no preference. You don't think about it, and you just live, and you are fulfilled. It is not trying to achieve anything. There's nothing to achieve. There's nothing to gain. There's nothing to have. All of that is preference. Find fulfillment here. Just like fulfillment is here. You find it where you are. You don't have to be or attempt or achieve anything. It's here. And then you, like Tao, are infinite, and you won't grow old or tired. Why? No preference. Doesn't matter. You know, you don't even identify it. It just is as it is. You are fulfilled. Thank you so much for joining me for another chapter of the Tao Te Ching.